Welcome to The Download, where we bring you discussion and analysis from a Catholic perspective. Today's Wednesday, June 14th, 2023. I'm Bradley Eli, here with my two co-hosts, Simon Rafe, Christine Niles. And join us today in the fourth chair, special treat, Dave Gordon. Howdy, Dave.
Well, howdy, Brad.
Religion and persecution. The human person needs something to worship. If we weren't worshiping the one true God, we will end up by worshiping something else, probably self. It could be the pleasures of the flesh, or money, or literal idolatry, but everyone worships something. We'll get into that a little later in the show, but first, a news item. A Catholic farmer in Louisiana is facing backlash for publicly honoring the Sacred Heart of our Lord during the month of June. The farmer is Ross McKnight, father of 5 and owner of Backwater Foie Gras, a company that provides duck products to local restaurants. Ross put up a long post on Instagram near the start of this month saying June is the month of the Sacred Heart, calling on locals to pray the Rosary, especially in French, the ancestral language of many people in southern Louisiana. McKnight also spoke against calling June Pride Month, saying every cause under the sun doesn't need its own day or its own month. In the wake of that, he's lost a significant amount of business, with several major clients canceling their deals with him to provide foie gras for their restaurants. The loss of business reportedly amounts to thousands of dollars a month, but they do have a Give, Send, Go, which has raised nearly 100 grand. Good for them. What do you guys think about this? I mean, this is just one more attempt at a basic Catholic father, homesteader, father, entrepreneur. Good for you, Ross, for providing your family in such a good way. And all he's doing is just a basic Catholic thing, saying, well, June is the Sacred Heart, you know, pray your Rosary and honor the Sacred Heart. That's nothing out there. And he's not like protesting. Really? He's just calling to mind our Catholic heritage and saying, can't we be proud of our Catholic heritage?
Well, number one, I would say we need to extend fraternal encouragement to him and a congratulations, and really circle the wagons and support him. As fast as we are in the Catholic world to give needed criticisms, and there are many instances in our sick, fetid culture where we do have to give criticisms, we also need to be able to give props where props are due in cases where it's proper. And this is one of them. It's a story of encouragement, actually. And it's sad that this man's livelihood is now under attack from the LGBT mafia and from worldlings over his stance of religion and good faith. But so it's all the more incumbent on us to give him encouragement and then give him our support.
Yeah, it's very encouraging that he's made $100,000 in this Give, Send, Go. That's fantastic. Yeah. And we should clarify, too, that the reason that the LGBT lobby pushed back is because he did make a dig against pride. He did say we shouldn't be celebrating pride this month. Instead, we should be celebrating humility, the humility of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. But he didn't come out and say horrible things. That's kind of all he said. Yeah. And then all these people freaked out and the restaurants canceled, and he's losing something like $6,000 to $10,000 a month over this.
Well, it's a huge thing, because you make $100,000, like, oh, well, he's doing well. But if you're losing $10,000 a month, then how long is that going to go on?
It's a couple of years profit, probably, at the profit rate of foie gras. I mean, it's interesting that he's saying that, he's got, because obviously he's providing to restaurants, that, he's providing to restaurants there. He's not, selling directly to the consumer. I mean, possibly he could. I think foie gras actually freezes pretty well and travels reasonably good. So, there's maybe an option there for him to do that. But certainly, you've got to look at this situation. Okay, so you've got these guys in southern Louisiana, these restaurants, who were buying foie gras from him. They're probably cutting off their beak to spite their feathers at this point, because how many more suppliers of foie gras have you got? If you can do a trade of $6,000 worth of foie gras to restaurants, it's like, okay, dude, I don't know what the foie gras industry there is like. These people may be coming back to him when all of this has blown over. When all of this is blown over, they may be coming back. It reminds me, of obviously foie gras, very high-end product from a bird, lower-end product from the bird, delicious chicken sandwiches there from Chick-fil-A. If you remember, there was that big backlash against Chick-fil-A some years ago, and it really didn't do anything to them, because Chick-fil-A make delicious chicken sandwiches, and that's what everybody wanted to go do. If this guy's foie gras is good enough, I suspect the restaurants are going to be back quietly, without a bunch of fanfare, once all of this is blown up.
Well, there were concessions, if I'm not mistaken, with the Chick-fil-A thing. Didn't the CEO kind of come out and walk back the statements that had gotten them into trouble in the first place, if I'm remembering correctly. And what I want to say here is, I think this is an opportunity. There's an opportunity for good Christians, for good Catholics to circle the wagons and protect our own, and to show that when you do make a stand for your faith, there's nothing to fear because we have your back and God provides. Christ is going to have your back, and you have to put your trust in God. And let us be his instruments in this case. Fine, let's support this man.
Yeah, exactly. Just following on what you just said, our open plea now is anybody watching this, restaurants out there, go,
Yep.
Go pick him up and use him. Go to him so that he can have business again wherever you're located. You said that foie gras probably
travels
well. So, if you're a restaurant, you don't even have to be Catholic or Christian, but if you want to support religious freedom and the right for him to proudly display his Catholic faith and that sort of thing, then go, please, do business with him.
I was going to say, just also to tack on something Simon said, in my experience, in all of these things that I've seen, most of them in my lifetime, where the left targets somebody, they are ruthless and vicious. And whereas we tend to forget on the right, and you have like Donald Trump Jr. coming out and being like, okay, let's not sink Budweiser. It's a great American company. After like a week of them taking a hit, we lose our steam real fast. The left tends to be vicious, and when they get on somebody, they try and destroy them. They will sue you, the Masterpiece Cake Shop. They will try to sue you into oblivion. And so I really want to make sure that this guy stays afloat.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I don't know what else he's producing, but of course, perhaps his offerings can be diversified. I don't know if he's selling, other duck products. Certainly he's doing foie gras there. I would say to any restaurateur going out to buy foie gras from him, learn how to cook it. This is my one cooking thing. It's like every single time I've gone to a restaurant and had foie gras, it's just been badly done. I mean, the foie gras can be great, but it's just badly executed in restaurants as a general rule. But I think to an important point here, look, that obviously he's got this situation where he's raised this money from the Give, Send, Go. That's great. He's not a man who's wanting a handout, I'm sure. This is a man who's got a business. This is a man who's working down there in southern Louisiana. Obviously, Louisiana is, it's one of those states that is constantly sort of ravaged by hurricanes and all these kind of things. The people down there have a great sense of self-reliance. This is not a man who's going to want a handout. This is a man who wants a business. He's got this business. He sells foie gras. It should be, people should be going in and patronizing his business at that point. But I think, that we will see he should be okay in the short term because of this fundraising.
To me, it shows the diabolicalness of the whole thing. And I don't want to just throw that word out there all the time, but the idea that the month of June, now Ross from McKnight was saying that not every month needs its own cause. Why, out of they only got 12 months, and June was chosen for this LGBT pride. And as McKnight was saying, it should be the month of humility, where Jesus himself, Matthew 11:29 says, I am meek and humble of heart, right? So Jesus himself identifies us as humble during that month that we're honoring the Sacred Heart, in which he himself said, I am meek and humble of heart, and they're throwing this pride out there. And what did the devil fall from? Was pride. And he's putting this pride against Christ's humility in the same month in which we're honoring the Sacred Heart. That's from the body of Christ. And we have Corpus Christi, which is the incarnational aspect of Christ being sacramentally present on our altars. All of that contrasted to the degradation of the body, and it's not just that everyone who has perverted use of the sexual faculties outside of marriage is in the same boat. It's not that the LGBT people are all put upon because they can't do that. I mean, you can't have contraceptive, you can't have bestiality, you can't have masturbation, you can't have all these different things out there. It's not just the LGBT crowd that can't use the gifts of sexuality outside of holy matrimony, and you call that a perverted use or inordinate use of the sexual gifts. So using that degradation of the body pitted against the month in which we honor the body of Christ, and looking at humility of Christ, we're pitting that against the pride. I mean, that just screams of diabolical inversion going on. I don't think that's by month, that's not, you didn't just fall into that. Somehow that had to be a design.
The reason that June was chosen to be Pride Month is because of the Stonewall riots that took place in June of 1969. The Stonewall riots were, this was in Greenwich Village in New York. They went into the Stonewall Club. It was a gay club. And this is back at a time when homosexual activity as well as prostitution was outlawed. I mean, prostitution is still illegal in New York, but the cops came in, they arrested a bunch of people, and then it led to 6 days of riots in the streets by the whole, at the time, I guess, LGBT contingent. And this great myth has built up around the Stonewall riots, this great myth like, oh, this was the start of the gay movement, and this was a wonderful time of pushing back against authority and coming out and being proud, when all it was a bunch of cops going in, arresting transvestite, transgender, homosexual prostitutes. That's what they were doing. They were prostitutes. But like I said, they've built this great myth around it, and that's why they chose June. But it just so happened that it coincided with, the month of the Sacred Heart.
And then you get the rainbow. Okay, God's promise never
Stolen
destroy the
from
world,
us.
right? And now you have the rainbow pride going on with regard to, is that the reason God's going to actually purify the world again?
Right. I mean, let's not ignore the fact, and it is, I think, a God wink, a bit of eschatology, perhaps, that we'll look back on in a couple hundred years and be like, oh, this fits into the narrative of salvation history. But the 6-colored flag, making a mockery of like the true covenant, which is to seven oneself. The sign of the covenant is 7, which is why the rainbow given to Noah is 7-colored, because just like the days of the week are 7, and there's a covenant at creation, a covenant and the number 7 go together, and it's the same. The 6th month, the biblical number for imperfection, that of course attaches two things diabolical, that should not be ignored. I think what we're seeing is a bit of a God wink playing out before our eyes, and it's not like they chose it because it was the number of imperfection. Again, it goes back to the Stonewall.
These are absolutely, and I'll let you finish, but just quickly, pride. Pride was the chief defect of Satan.
Yeah, right.
Non serviam, I will not serve. It was his pride that kept him. And that's the banner of the entire movement.
Right.
I don't think that's a coincidence.
No, not at all. I think, though, that what we have here, it's really very interesting. We actually sort of pull all these things together. So we've actually got, you, Dave, talking about how there's got all this orientation towards 6, which is like this not quite 7. It's not quite complete. It's this imperfection. You're talking, Christina, obviously about, pride as the chief sin of Satan there, and it's that sense of latching on to something satanic. And obviously, Brad, you've spoken about the perversion of the Sacred Heart. All of these things, what they are essentially an example of, if you don't have God in your life, if you don't have authentic religion, which of course is Catholicism, there are no other authentic religions. I'm going to get cancelled myself for doing that, but whatever, I don't self-foie gras. The whole thing is that if you don't have the authentic religion, the authentic worship of Jesus Christ in the Eucharist, which is only found within the Catholic Church, if you don't have that authentic worship, you have a void in your life, and you will fill it with something else. So you will fill it with sexual perversion. You will fill it with, this inordinate pride in who you want to have sex with. I mean, I'm not entirely sure that that's like really a thing to be proud of. You will fill it with whatever you can, because there's a void. Nature abhors a vacuum, and you will just sort of suck in all of this bad stuff in the world into you if you don't have God in yourself.
I want to go back just very quickly to Mr. McKnight, because the way that he's choosing to handle this is pretty remarkable, and it's very grace-filled. Even though he's lost 2/3 of his business, the way he says that he has, and the way that the article characterizes this, they say it's a baffling sense of peace and even joy. McKnight says, quote, "There's that animal need to have food and shelter and clothing, certainly, but I don't know how to precisely explain myself. I've lost everything overnight, but the suffering is valuable." Then he goes on to say, "We count it a privilege to have lost much. It is an honor to participate through the suffering of our family in the triumph of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary. If the world hate you, know ye that it hated me before you." That's a beautiful way.
Yeah. I mean, he understands redemptive suffering like nobody else. If you want to wear the name Christ, you got to carry the cross, and he is definitely doing that. All he did in his original post, he asked for 3 things. Consecrate your home to the Sacred Heart in the month of June. Just a standard standard traditional Catholic devotion. Wear a badge of the Sacred Heart, in public, whatever, and pray the rosary in your family. And that's just asking for that. He didn't say go out and lobby against gay movements and go out there and write bad things about homosexuals or anything like that. Just stand up for the Sacred Heart, of which you profess already to believe that Jesus is Lord. And that's what he's calling for. And that example, you have the dynamic where you're talking about, Simon, where that void comes in. This is an example of trying to cause that void that's going to be filled later on by all of these things, or in the process. So you have a dynamic of sucking out valid, authentic Christianity in the public square, Ross McKnight, and then at the same time trying to fill it, which we'll get into later on with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence and all the Dodger Stadium and all that stuff we'll be talking about later on. This is being filled. You have that dynamic. It's almost like the yin and the yang, right? I hate to use anything from
yin.
Hindu and
There's no G.
Right?
Yin.
Yin yang. So, but I mean, there's this double dynamic going on where you're actually at the one time you see this right in front of your eyes with Ross McKnight, that they're trying to suck that out of society, expunge that using financial means of coercion and that, and also just hubris going at him. And at the same time trying to fill that void continually with these other things, which is naturally going to happen if you don't have God. And that's been going on for decades.
To return to the original point I was making, is this man deserves to be commended, and that can't be reiterated, I think, enough. Because think about it. At Church Militant, we field complaints sometimes because we have to go after people. We have to expose corruption in the church, in the ecclesiastical community. So we have to do a lot of negative reporting. And it's a joy when something really that's a bright spot, a ray of hope and positivity, comes across our desks and we get to talk about that. Especially, let's just juxtapose this with what we were talking about on the download last week, the Dodgers thing that you alluded to today, Brad, where we have all these professional grown men baseball players, the caricatures of masculinity with 19-inch biceps and like 30-inch quads and all that, who won't take a stand for their Lord and Savior when he's being mocked by the organization that they're working for, and they're making millions of dollars, huge whopping salaries. And then we have this example of this man. So we had to call them out for doing too little. And now we have somebody who's doing what we've been calling for this whole time.
Yeah. And
he needs to be patted on the back.
Absolutely.
And he deserves our support and encouragement.
And he says, celebrate humility with an image of the Sacred Heart. And the very encouraging thing is that is actually going viral now across the Catholic world. People are buying Sacred Heart flags. They're hanging them outside their homes. They're changing their Facebook or Twitter avatars to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. I've done that. They're posting images of the Sacred Heart. I'm seeing it all over the place, and it's very encouraging. I would encourage those viewers out there watching this who are Catholic, do that yourself. Go order a flag on Amazon of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and hang it out in front of your home. That's a very nice, wonderful public witness of your...
There is. You are going to get backlash for that because people go, we shouldn't be supporting Amazon, and I probably agree on that as a principle. There is a company as sells flags specifically for religious stuff. I cannot remember who they are, but they were shared to me.
If you don't want Amazon, that's fine. Just go find another.
Well, here's the thing. I will find them because it was our lady here, Carmen, who does all the travel stuff. She found them. She sent them round the thing. By the time this airs, I will find out what it is, and I will get a link in the thing, and it's a company that sells religious things. One of the things that I would want to say about this whole thing, because you're, Dave, obviously talking about this positive sort of the anti-boycott, which is why we're drinking the Catholic coffee, because they were kind enough to send it to us, and we like them. I would be eating foie gras, but nobody sent me any. I would have. I'm not a big fan of foie gras, but I will take a duck. But obviously, within that sense of the sort of the anti-boycott, all of these places are turning their avatars and images and stuff into these rainbow flag versions of their corporate logo, or they're putting a pride symbol if they're a private individual. Some interesting points on this. I read an article this morning that was actually talking about the number of people who are approving of transgenderism, who are approving of homosexuality. The numbers are going down. Year on year, they are actually dropping down. It is getting now, even among Democrats, a majority of Democrats, self-identified Democrats, say that men should not be competing in women's sports, which is kind of like, okay, there's a thing. Another interesting point, did you notice what happened to the corporate rainbow logos this month? They were there for about 3 days, and then a bunch of them disappeared. They just went. A bunch of them aren't there anymore.
Well, what's crazy is I just read this. Apparently, Starbucks has implemented, the union, Starbucks union is actually complaining, saying that Starbucks has actually banned rainbow flags in their company.
Wow.
But Starbucks came out and said, no, this is wrong, this is rumor, this is false. But the unions are insisting this is a policy that they themselves implemented privately. Now they're caught and they're walking back. So I thought that's very interesting.
Well, so here's another interesting thing. My wife, she likes to, I know, I'm sorry. It's like, yeah, gosh, indeed. Important women in my life. But my wife, she likes to watercolor. She's just started doing watercolors, and she's a member of a Facebook group, and each month they have a challenge. You've got to paint this thing. This month, of course, is rainbows, and so my wife's like, oh, merciful Lord, no, fine. So she painted this lovely, little rainbow. She painted this rainbow, shared it. A whole bunch of people are sharing pictures of rainbows with the statement, this is what the rainbow is really about, and it's like Noah's Ark, with the raven coming back and the dove coming back and the thing, and it's not about pride, and it's this. She was absolutely shocked, and so there is this thing coming that we are starting to fill this space. Yeah. Talking about the filling the space thing, there's a very interesting thing that a lot of the information that we have about the McKnight case comes from this chap called Harrison Weinhold, who is a friend of McKnight's, who gave an interview to the Federalist, and he actually says, interestingly, that a lot of these restaurants that are canceling their orders are not real Louisianans. Now, I don't know what constitutes a real Louisianan. If I had Nick here, he's not. He's in Los Angeles right now, I believe, helping out with all of our coverage. But if I had Nick here, I would ask, what constitutes a real Louisianan? And he would probably demonstrate by, killing some kind of small animal with his teeth and then trading using its skin. But these people who have come into New Orleans, they're big New Orleans restaurants, they are not real Louisianans. They're transplants who've come out with these ideas that are not, the values of Louisiana. If we think about it, New Orleans is the heart of carnival, the heart of all of that stuff that goes on, all of that degeneracy that happens at Mardi Gras. I mean, that's certainly not, an authentic expression of a Catholic thing. It's taking that, it's twisting it, it's changing it. It's, okay, you've lost your Catholic identity. What has flooded in to do it? Louisiana does not have counties, I believe. It has parishes, which of course is obviously not necessarily like this is an actual Catholic parish, but that's where the word comes from. There's a Catholic tradition there, and again, it's being sucked out by these things, and that's kind of the point that I would really want to make. If you don't put God in your life and at the center of your life, even as a Catholic, if you're kind of like, yeah, you know what, I do it on Sundays, I say my rosary when I remember and stuff, you are going to be absolutely hosed. You are going to be totally hosed because you've got a void and something will rush in.
Yeah, Sheen was talking about that. If you don't worship the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, you worship the unholy Trinity, me, myself, and I, and in all of its various aspects of that. He also talked about when the church gets rid of certain things, such as the nuns who got rid of their long habits. He said the world picks up the maxi coat. When the grandmothers will put down their rosary beads, and the hippies put them around their neck. This is from him, Sheen, that the hippies put them around their neck and call them love beads. And when the, they're starting to talk about it more now, but for several decades, they didn't talk about the devil, the demonic, and possession and all that. That was really a thing, a problem for, really until Gabriel Amorth kind of helped put that back on the main, scene. And he said, but then the psychologists talk about the devil within. So it was complete misuse, but they pick it up like it's a toy, but they start to misuse it. And the same thing going on here with regard to, God understood us so well when he gave us liturgy. He knew that we were incarnate, that we have a spirit and a body, and we were using both, prayers going up and incense and bells and the vestments and the candles and all this procession, all that liturgy that's going on with all of that, very incarnate with all of that. And that is really, you would expect that from the bride of Christ, right? The incarnate God has a mystical body, and that mystical body has its way of expressing prayer, and it's in a spirit-body relationship. And that type of thing is being mocked with regard to all of these, like the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. They have to have a thing to mock, and they're mocking that. They have certain ritual. I mean, look at the satanic masses and stuff going on. It's complete inversion of the traditional liturgy. And even one time, Simon, you were talking about, government itself. Socialism wants to be your parent. Communism wants to be your God. Well, we're kind of in that stage right now where it's kind of shifting from parent to God status, where we'll tell you if you can have these procedures, medical procedures, or if we should just let you die now at the end of your life, or you should be able to get the money and you shouldn't. They're making all the decisions that we should be able to make.
Well, this makes sense. It all makes sense because evil has no creative power.
It's true.
And that's there is no supreme evil, because evil is only a privation of something, of the good. Only the good truly exists. Everything else is just a privation of that good. So if evil could, if there were a supreme evil, it would end up destroying itself, is what the scholastics said, because it would have destroyed the good, which it ultimately apes. But the devil only can mock things. He can only ape things. He can never create things himself. So of course, as we have a culture that has waning religion and waning true religion, we're going to have waxing false religion, and the false religion will cloak itself in the mantle of true religion. So instead of having things like the month of Sacred Heart and the Feast of Corpus Christi, we're going to be seeing the culture peddling things like Pride Month and gay pride days, and not processions of Eucharistic parades and processions. You'll be seeing gay pride processions. There's only a mockery of what's good, but never a creative power of something that is truly in and of itself evil. So that it stands to reason what you're saying, Brad.
Yeah. There was
and you talked too, Brad, about the Catholic liturgy as someone who was a Protestant, a very diehard Protestant, and then essentially discovered Catholicism as an adult. I have to say the Catholic liturgy is a tremendous blessing. Protestants, they're very suspicious of Catholic liturgy. They think, oh, this is just externals, and it's just sort of popish trumperies, and you've got the bells and the whistles, and everything's just focused on the externals. And obviously that's not true. Liturgy is such a gift because, as you mentioned, it's an incarnational faith. So the physical is just as important as the spiritual. There's a certain Gnosticism in Protestantism, a certain spiritualizing of everything where the externals don't matter, and all you can do is, if you want to go to church at home, just stay at home because God's everywhere and everything's the same, and pray at home. God's there too. Which I guess, according to Protestants, that is right because their churches are not sacred ground the way that Catholic churches are sacred ground, because we have the body, blood, soul, and divinity of our Lord, the Holy Eucharist, God himself corporeally present on the altar. Protestants lack that. So you have these mega churches where, hey, bring in your coffee, sip your coffee in church while we worship, while we sing, while the pastor's up there giving the sermon. And they can do that because it's not sacred ground. I've been to services like that. I was doing that for a long time, for many years. But even when they reject the Catholic liturgy, the fact is they do have their own sort of ritual as well. They do. They have their own, you come in, you sit down, we have certain prayers, then we have some songs, then it's time for the sermon and scripture reading, and then it's time for prayer. And then so they have their own liturgy. Okay, it's made up, but still, when you reject that, everybody craves some sort of ritual. Everyone does.
Well, it's everyone. Everyone craves essentially the same things, the things that we were built to desire. Liturgy, so forth. So it's interesting. You say that the Protestants, have obviously got rid of the Eucharist. They don't have this sense of having the body of Christ. That is a man. That he is fully human, fully divine. He's fully human, and he is at the center of the liturgy. So what do you end up with? Well, you end up with another man at the center of the liturgy. You end up with whoever the pastor is. And that's the thing. We had Kyle sitting here, and his experience as a Protestant, when he was talking about, well, what do you do when the pastor moves on? The preacher moves on. He goes to a different church. He goes somewhere else. Well, do you follow him? And it's like, okay, so you're following him at that point. And interestingly, you see that in Catholic churches where there's been this de-emphasis of the Eucharist, and it's become the person of the priest. So, now this is where you end up with these celebrity priests, with these people of, he's so wonderful. He's so holy.
Yeah.
There you go. He's so wonderful. He's so holy. He gives these great homilies and stuff. It's like, my brother in Christ, you've completely missed the point.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I think every Protestant who's now a Catholic can recognize that the center of Protestant worship is the sermon. And it's very much wedded to the person offering the sermon. And I cannot tell you the number of times I've seen churches broken up and split because the pastor decides to go somewhere else. And so most of the people leave. They split because they're very wedded to that particular person. And I think that's one of the big criticisms of some of the more modern Catholic liturgy today, where, taking the tabernacle out of, away from the altar so that the priest, and then turning the priest to face the people, and then suddenly he becomes the center of worship. And that's not the center of Catholic liturgy.
There was we're talking about aping things in religion and filling it with false. This just came across last night. The spokesperson for the World Economic Forum.
AI. Just think about a religion whose holy book is written by an AI. That could be a reality in a few years.
His name is Yuval Noah Harari. He's the CEO.
So he's with the World Economic Forum, Harari, and he's talking about a AI-generated holy book. Now, can you imagine where all this is going to? One world religion, people have been talking about for years. They kind of want a one world government, one world religion. Talked about the World Economic Forum. Religion is just a way of controlling people, right? So why don't we get a world religion that's acceptable to all people? Now, can you see where this is going? Where you have AI, this would actually be kind of interesting to see how this would go. Let's go ahead and feed into it the Quran and the Old Testament and the New Testament, and maybe some Hindu stuff, and see what all the synthesis. Put some parameters in there to kind of suture this all together.
It'll come out with the Book of Mormon.
Book of Mormon, and see if you can't generate something that's acceptable. Got all the flavors there of everything going on, and see how many people would actually fall for that. I put that on your radar.
Well, they've already done it. They've already done it, not with AI, but they've done it with syncretic religions such as the Baha'i faith and these kind of things that are attempting to sort of come along and say, let's take the moral teachings of Christ and the moral teachings of the Buddha and the moral teachings of Muhammad and all of this sort of stuff. Let's take that, put it all together, and you know what? Broadly speaking, there's a lot of agreement. This is why that all the world's religions can get together and do stuff like, hey, let's all get together and feed the hungry. Everyone agrees feeding the hungry is a cool thing. Everyone agrees, clothing the naked. Everyone likes peace. This is the whole thing. It's fine.
Coexist.
Right. And you know what? If that was it, if the whole point of religion was just like, can't we all get along, brah? If that was the whole thing, it was like, can we make a heaven on earth? Can we make a utopia here? Sure, fine, absolutely. But that's not the point of religion. The point of religion is salvation. And salvation has nothing to do.
It's got an eschatology to it. It's in the next lifetime.
The puppeteers, though, of the New World Order have a vested interest in this. And we have this great quote here from Joseph de Maistre. It says, wherever an altar is found, there civilization exists. And culture, as we know, comes from the word cult, which is religion. And that founds the culture. So if you're trying to remake kind of culture or society in the image of man, if you're trying to puppeteer it and to engineer it to be some way that is acceptable to secular humanists, to atheists, to the ideas of the New World Order, then you very much would have a vested interest in creating a syncretistic religion that's inoffensive and bland. It doesn't create transcendent truths or acknowledge transcendent truths, but it's rather anthropocentric as opposed to theocentric. That's what's at play here. And we have to acknowledge that when you do pivot away from true religion, you are, because nature abhors a vacuum, as you noted, Simon, you are paving the way for false religions to take its place. So as true religion wanes, false religions wax, and that's what you're seeing, and that's where these ideas are really coming into play.
That's what happened now throughout history, paganism and Christianity. Either one thrives or the other thrives. When the light comes in, the darkness subsides, and when the light wanes, the darkness rises. And we're just having that in our own day and age. What we're trying to do is draw the viewer to see that big picture. So you don't see the Dodgers thing as an isolated incident thing. So you don't see what happened to McKnight as an isolated thing. See it as a cohesive, so you get your brain around the whole thing, so you know how to properly understand it, respond to it, be okay with all this stuff heading on. We understand there's a hurricane coming in. It's not just a little breeze here and a little breeze here and a breeze there. It's a hurricane, and you are standing in a hurricane, and you need to brace yourself for that hurricane. You need to reinforce yourself. Pray without ceasing, as Simons wants to say, and get a grip around what's happening in your day and age, so that you know how to stand firm in this day and age.
That's what Vatican II called for. Read the signs of the times. We're called to read the signs of the times and to react to them by bringing the light of the gospel into the post-Christian world. I would say the hurricane is upon us.
Yeah.
If you look at what's going on in secular culture, it's an idolization, it's a worship of everything that's fell and chthonic and evil, and what is good and holy and true is denigrated, is mocked, is looked down upon, and all one need to look no further than this Dodgers event that's coming up. People are utterly enthralled with public figures of notoriety in this world, pop stars, singers, idols, yada, 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 and they look askance at people like, say, Mother Teresa, who are walking examples of piety and virtue. It shows that we're in the midst of the hurricane. And
also this, what we're talking about, people leaving the truth and letting something else fill the void. And very often it's dark forces. Exorcists are corroborating this. For instance, Father Carlos Martins has this excellent series, this excellent podcast titled ExorcistFiles.tv. I encourage people to go out to listen to it, because he said the entire reason that he launched the series in the first place, which now has more than 2 million downloads, it was to catechize the youth primarily, because he said he was looking at polls and he was utterly shocked to find that a third of the youth were rejecting the Catholic faith, leaving the faith entirely. But the problem with that is once you leave the protective mantle of the faith, you now open yourself up to very dark forces, preternatural forces. And he said with that leaving of the faith, there's this corroborating rise in occult activity, and then requests for exorcisms, skyrocketing from this same young group of people saying they've left this, but now what do? They dabble in the occult. They seek answers somewhere else. And yeah, that's why he started this entire very successful podcast series.
Yeah, you see, I think that again is this classic example of nature abhorring a vacuum. Human beings are not created to be simply physical, secular things. We're not created just to have this sort of horizontal connection with things within the material universe. And obviously, certainly, we are created to have that interaction with fellow human beings and the rest of material creation. To have pet animals and to take care of animals and to take care of the environment and to shape absolutely 100%. But we are also created to have an interaction with the supernatural, the preternatural, the stuff that lies beyond the created physical world. And if you're not doing it the one permitted way, which is through prayer, it's through prayer to the Almighty. That's the rule. And it's like, okay, so if you're not doing prayers to the Almighty, what are you going to end up doing? You're going to end up doing like prayers or some kind of communication with just like whatever happens to be out there. And you know what? Things will answer you. Yes. That's the whole point. Things will answer if you go knocking just randomly on doors in the supernatural world. And that's the problem, that people want this. People want this ritual. People want this sort of supernatural connection. I don't even know if they're necessarily going for answers. I don't think these people even have questions. They just are going, and it's just like, oh, I need something beyond me, and so I'm spiritual, not religious. Yeah, okay, yeah, and demons are knocking at your door.
Well, that's why the Ouija board is still one of the top-selling games, if not the top-selling. I think it beats Monopoly even for #1 board game. And we talked about the Dodger protest going on. It's going to be on the Feast of the Sacred Heart, which is on Friday, so hence the month of the Sacred Heart. And once again, to catch our viewers up to speed, Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, completely mocking and blaspheming religious life for the Catholic Church and all the things that we hold sacred and dear. The bishops did kind of acknowledge that's not a good thing that they should do. And we're going to have a live coverage of that starting at 5:30 on Friday. You want to tune in for that in lieu of the download. We won't be having the download that day. That will be the block of production time right there. And we'll be covering a mostly peaceful procession that will be taking place that day.
And it's going to be a riot, Brett?
Right?
Should be peaceful.
I would not put anything. I would not put anything past the lefties in Los evangelists.
Well, of course, okay, so we're going back to the BLM riots and everything like this, 2020, you know, they would call, you know, they're burning down city blocks, for crying out loud, and they would call them mostly peaceful protests. That's what we're hearkening back to there. And here, of course, there won't be any burning down of any buildings whatsoever, but my goodness, if you have a microaggression by using such a word as protest, I mean, somebody else is going to come unglued, such as the bishop might have his mitre pop off. So, you know, we got to be careful about our language and all that. And that's unfortunate, because that type of approach is not going to help in this battle to stop the hemorrhaging of positive Christianity in the home, with your own children, you know, talking with your DRE that maybe you shouldn't be talking about all this, you know, pro-LGBT stuff down at the shrine of the little flower to class age kids. And on and on. You can't approach it this way, because those guys don't play nice. You do always have to be virtuous. You always have to pray without ceasing. McKnight is praying without ceasing because he is actually bearing that cross joyfully every day. So he doesn't have to have a rosary in his hand that moment. And he's still a prayer in actuality going on right now.
I don't understand the silence from the chancery. I really don't. You know, Gomez, when he came in, was supposed to be on, you know, the more orthodox level of, you know, United States bishops. That was the thing. I lived in Southern California when this all was taking place. Everyone was somewhat excited that we were getting Gomez. It wasn't my diocese, but it was the one right below me, the Diocese of Los Angeles. And this is most distressing. I mean, I just don't know what he could possibly be thinking about. We want to have a dialogue. You know, we're not going to call out the Dodgers. We're not going to speak to them directly or make a big statement about this issue. It's like, if there was ever a time to fight, it's now. This is a total failure to read the signs of the times and to be a shepherd. You carry the crozier, or you wear the hat. You act like a shepherd, you dress up like a shepherd, but this is the time for you to be a shepherd, and it's a complete letdown failure. I don't get it.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to back Gomez for a minute here. I'm going to give some Gomez-splaining for a minute here. This guy took Cardinal Mahoney, to $600 million lawsuits against sex abuse victims in his diocese back in his day. He used to run L.A. diocese like the mafia. And if you were accused or you know, going to look, the law is getting too close, he would take these guys, we did downloads on the back in the day, and ship you down to Mexico or whatever and hide you. I mean, straight up hiding sex abuse victims when the law is looking for you. And he is on ice now. Okay, Gomez makes sure that he's not doing any public ministry. In 2013, we all going to talk about how McCarrick got rehabilitated. Mahoney got rehabilitated in 2013.
By the Pope. By the Pope.
By the Pope, underneath Gomez. So now, okay, how can Gomez not fight? Why are we not fighting as Catholics stronger? Right. Even at Dodger Stadium on Friday, why are we not protesting?
Our leaders set the tone, though.
Okay, now I know, and that's what I'm talking about here. Gomez setting the tone because, rightly so, Mahoney's put on ice, Cardinal Mahoney, and then he sees he's taken off, rehabilitated. And the same month, McCarrick, by the same Pope, rehabilitated. Okay, fast forward to 2018, after the whole McCarrick thing blows up in June 20th of 2018, McCarrick is now outed as a homosexual predator in the New York Times. And Dolan says, yeah, that's actually true. And Rome says, yeah, we're going to put him back on ice, because McCarrick was taken off of ice by when Benedict had put him on ice. So Gomez sees all this, and Gomez says, well, we're going to do the right thing, DiNardo and Mahoney. We're going to go to Sean O'Malley. We're going to go to Rome and ask about this in October. We're going to see if we can't talk about all this at the November Synod. You know, synodality and the bishops and the local churches and all that type of stuff. Oh, no. You guys aren't going to do any of that. This is how it's going to be. You guys are going to talk about any of that stuff. We're going to shut your own General Assembly of Bishops, who are trying to run something in your own country, down, so that we can have a sham synod in Rome with Supich going like this, you know, and not talking about things. That's what Mahoney's problem is. He sees that from the top down. He's like handcuffed, and he's like, every time he tries to do something right, it gets undone. I kind of see his point a little bit.
But the thing is here, okay, that's sex abuse. Gomez has had his hands tied with regard to sex abuse and dealing with Mahoney and all that stuff. He has no excuse for allowing the totally heretical and dissident L.A. wreck to take place every single year in his archdiocese. They throw millions of dollars towards these things. You've got people like Father James Martin, Arthur Fitzmaurice, Father Greg Boyle, and Father Brian Massengale, all pushing heresy, pro-same-sex marriage, pro-transgender, pro-sodomy every single year, given a platform by Archbishop Gomez. He has no excuse for that at all.
Yeah, and on this subject, you know, the whole notion of saying, well, okay, he's been shut down a couple of times, so, you know, what's the point in doing it again? So you have to get shut down again. You know what? You know what? It's like, okay, let's pretend I'm Archbishop Gomez. I'm going to go and I'm going to do the right thing. Okay, I get shut down by, you know, some, you know, Pope, Cardinal, whatever. I get shut down by some anonymous Vatican bureaucrat. Okay, fine. You know what? I get to tell everyone, dude, I tried. I tried and I got shut down.
Well, that's a big thing on Judgment Day, to be able to stand up and say, I did the right thing and your vicar shut me down, so it's on him.
Yeah, it's on him. And most importantly, might come a day when he doesn't shut you down. Right. You know what? You know what? Here is the easiest way to make sure you lose. Don't fight.
Right.
And what's the worst thing that can happen? What happens? Okay, you're forced to retire earlier. Okay, fine. At least you retire or resign with a
If I was a bishop, and the Pope fired me, I would thank him for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can sleep the deep sleep of the just, knowing that you fulfilled your duty, which you are bound under pain of sin to discharge well. And you're going to have to answer before the throne of our Lord on Judgment Day, for how did you care for your flock? And the judgment will be severe, because to those whom more is given, more is expected. The fact is, it's not an excuse to be like, well, you know, I was reading the prevailing winds of politics in the church, and you know what? This wasn't in favor with certain higher-ups in the USCCB, so I just wanted to play ball and play nice with them. It's like, you need to fall on your sword. You need to take one for the team. You need to be a martyr then, because this is happening right under your nose, and you are perhaps the most powerful man in Los Angeles, given the Catholic population there and all of the Hispanic population there. You pull considerable weight, perhaps more than even City Hall. And for you to be silent, then that is going to be God's judgment upon you.
And I think there's something to be discussed, for example, like with us, Church Militant. So we come out and we do a bunch of stuff. So, for example, we've come out and we've said, this Dodgers thing, terrible, shouldn't be allowed to go ahead. We've got this protest thing going on. Be there. On the Feast of the Sacred Heart.
Can we call it protest?
I'm calling it a protest right now. I don't care.
Mostly peaceful procession.
Yeah, protest.
It's a procession.
Protest.
To nowhere.
It's a protest. We are protesting. I am protesting the fact this is happening. We're doing this. There are a bunch of people, as has been alluded to by the rest of the panel, there's a bunch of people out there in the Catholic media who are saying, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing this way, you shouldn't be using this language. Every single thing that we do, some numpty out there in the Catholic media world comes along and says, Church Militant, you shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't be doing it this way. Fine. You know what? My cohorts come along and they tell me I shouldn't be doing it this way. That is exactly the same as, right, the bishop of wherever, the archbishop of wherever, the cardinal archbishop of whoever says, you know, hey, Gomez, you shouldn't be doing this. You know, to paraphrase Theoden from Lord of the Rings, last time I checked, Gomez and not Supich was Archbishop of Los Angeles.
They're trying to honor Pride Month by having this super gay approach.
Well, that's super gay approach right there. In the seminary for the last 50 years, these men have all been trained to have a super gay approach. Why? Because their formators, many of them were gay. We have tracked the rise of gaynicity in the seminaries, and I'm going to tell you, you're going to see a spike in the late 60s and 70s and early 80s with all of that. So those guys were actually having people who were homosexual. They were the formators. What is the hallmark of a homosexual? One, he's going to be the victim all the time. Two, he's not going to stand up and defend truth. He's not going to sacrifice himself for the sake of the good. Everything becomes expedient and political, and how does this look for me? So that's where they were trained. And I went through that whole era. You can't be anything standing on truth. You can't speak the truth because you're going to offend somebody. They tell you that in the seminary. And if you do, you're called stamped with the big scarlet R, rigid. You know, this whole thing about you can't stand up and be a man. And you won't, the goodbye good men, they got rid of all those people. They stripped out all the people who were left of their backbone and massaged it into such as they won't stand up straight anymore. And that's what you're left with, is a milquetoast, gay approach to all of these things. And that's all they understand. That's their formation. That's the water they swam in. That's how everybody does it and has for decades, not for 2,000 years. You know, back when Arius was being punched by Nicholas, that was not a gay approach. Okay.
And here's the thing, really, it comes down to a horror of suffering. It's a horror, it's the fear of suffering. And I don't want people out there watching this to think that we're all just a bunch of armchair theologians or whatever, just commentators sitting back in our comfortable little chairs and pointing fingers and saying, why aren't you doing this better and that better? We ourselves have taken the hits, okay? We ourselves have put our own hearts, you know, in our own, we've put things on the line and we've taken the hits, and some of those hits have hurt. We've had our reputations viciously smeared. We've had books published full of slander and calumny against us. We've, you know, all sorts of things. So it's not like we're just sitting here pointing fingers and not doing stuff. We know what it feels like, trust me, to be viciously smeared and slandered and all of that, but we still keep doing what we do.
Right, and lost livelihoods. A lot of people at Church Militant have been fired or gotten in trouble with employers, me included, for taking a stand for Catholic principles. We're not telling people that, you know, good leadership does not mean telling people, sending people off like lambs to the slaughter to do things that you yourself would not do. We all have experienced this. It's a super good point. And we're not just telling people to do things that we ourselves would not do. And especially a bishop who's going to be fine and set for life. You know, a lot of us have families here and we've still suffered slings and arrows and economic persecution and whatnot. And, you know, we made it through because we trust God. For somebody who's set like Gomez or, you know, the underlings or just other people that have their own businesses to not trust God, that's a big slap.
Oh, dude,
our Lord's
Gomez
face.
and those guys, talking about set for life, my goodness. Even if you are forced to resign, in bad odor, you have lawsuits against you, you know, the Bransfields, they still have plush expense accounts and cars and places to, you know, palatial digs to live in. McCarrick, he's still got whatever money is stashed away wherever, can go wherever he wants. These are the people in Worrell who was outed as a liar and finally forced to resign in humility, or in just being, humiliation. These guys still are set. They're basically have millions at their disposal. So Gomez and whoever else who just retires, my goodness, they're completely, totally, absolutely set. They have nothing to worry about in this lifetime. And what are you scared about? You have nothing left. You're not going to be elevated to the chancery. I mean, you're already in the chancery. You're not going to Rome. You're already so old. You know, there's nothing left for you to say, well, as a seminarian, I need to get ordained. And once I'm ordained, I'll take a stand. Well, I need to become a pastor. But once I'm a pastor, I'll take a stand. Well, I need to become, you know, up at the bishop and the chancellor. Then I'll take a stand. You'll never will. You'll spend your whole life compromising.
Well, I think as well, interestingly, you know, if Gomez did come out and do something, anything really, it wouldn't need to be something marvelous. I mean, he's some, you know, great, you know, Francis of Assisi moment. If he just came out and was like a semi-okay bishop, the man would be feted from coast to coast and from the 49th parallel to the Rio Grande. He would
Doesn't take much.
You know, every single, you know, soi-disant traditionalist, every single vaguely orthodox person, every single, you know, non-Catholic of goodwill would be like, wow, Gomez is great. He stood up against this thing. Doesn't need to do anything. Just needs to turn up that day and go, yes, I bless you. And that's it. He could do this and he would be great. It's not like the people in Los Angeles like you, dude. They don't like you. All of these homos in Los Angeles, the state of fruits and nuts and flakes, they don't like you. They don't like you because you represent this evil patriarchal system.
Right.
You sitting there and filing the serial numbers off and rubbing the corners off does not suddenly make you attractive.
Don't be ashamed of who you are. Just embrace your Catholic identity. You're not going to win. You're not going to out-left the left. You're not going to make the people on the left love you by how left you are, because Democrats are always going to be more left than that. And if we're willing to canonize Harrison Butker for wearing a brown scapular, imagine if a Catholic actually took a stand about something going on in sports.
We're going to have to shut down this runaway train because we're out of time today. Thanks for joining us for today's episode of The Download. And a little note before we go, on Friday, we will not be having The Download like normal. Instead, we'll have live coverage of the prayer rally outside Dodger Stadium. Now, please join us as we finish in prayer, begging Our Lady's intercession for our nation and our church. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Salve Regina, Mater Misericordiae,
vita dulcedo et spes nostris ave, a te clamamus exules filii Eve, a te suspiramus gemites afflictes, in hac lacrimarum vale, ea ergo advocata nostra, illos tuos misericordes oculos, ad nos converte, et Iesum benedictum fructum ventris tui, nobis post hoc exilium ostende, o clemens, o pia, o dulcis Virgo Maria. Amen.
Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
Amen.
Thank you again for joining us for the download. We premiere a new episode like this on weekdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. From all of us here at Church Militant, God bless you.